Here now we have key House members, Kevin Brady from Texas. He's the vice chair of the Joint Economic Committee. And joining us by phone, Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York. His district, by the way, in the middle of the Hurricane Sandy zone. And there is a snowstorm out there now. So I appreciate Mr. Meeks very much. I want to go to my friend Kevin Brady first, though. Did John Boehner's speech surprise you? Is this a conciliatory message done deliberately, and are we going to get off the dime on the fiscal cliff, Kevin?
Well, first let me say to Greg, our prayers are with you. We're in Hurricane Alley here in Texas. We know how devastating these are. So if there's anything we can do to help you in your district, please let us know. Secondly, John Boehner made, I think, exactly the right 2 points today. One, he said the president doesn't have a mandate to increase taxes. In fact, the strong reelection of a Republican House has made it clear the American public doesn't want higher taxes. And the second point was the right balance to this fiscal cliff to address this issue is a combination of a stronger economy that generates new revenues through fundamental tax reform, as well as spending restraint that includes entitlement reforms. I really think what he said today is exactly where the Republican conference is: not higher taxes, higher revenue from strong growth.
Gregory Meeks, is that where the Democratic caucus will be in the House? I know you're in the minority, but you're a vocal minority. You heard Kevin Brady. What's your take on this new Boehner plan?
Well, I want to first thank Kevin because he is my friend for the outreach and the concern that he's had for the residents that we have that are really suffering out here on the Rockaway Peninsula because of Sandy. Really appreciate it. And we are looking to do, I think that, and I'm hopeful that because we must make sure we don't have the fiscal cliff, and that we'll be able to sit down and negotiate, and I think something in the same vein, a big deal in the vein of Simpson Bowles. I think that the president and the speaker tried to work something out before where there is, additional revenue, because I think that's really where it broke down before, where there was a pledge that not to do any revenue at all, but there has to be some additional revenue to go along with cuts. It has to be both, where there's sacrifices made by everybody, and I think that the richest 2% can afford to pay a little bit more just where we were, but we got to figure it out. And, and I understand about entitlements and other programs. We need to put everything on the table and try to figure out how we can work it out for the benefit of the country.
But, Kevin Brady, let me just come back to something. It sounds to me, you tell me, but it sounds like there's two things going on here. Short run, you've got the tax cliff. You've also got the budget sequestration, the across-the-board budget cuts. Longer term, it sounds like Mr. Boehner wants to explore tax reform and entitlement reform and so forth. It's the short term that Wall Street is real worried about. Today's 300-point sell-off may, Kevin, have something to do with that. What happens in the short run?
Yeah, they tie together very well because obviously extending the current tax relief at the level it is with a guaranteed timetable for fundamental reform next year solves both the short-term and the long-term issue. And on sequestration, having a real, meaningful, authentic spending restraint program that also tackles entitlement, I think that certainty about whether America will get its act together on its financial house, especially addressing Social Security, Medicare, I actually think that'll be very good for the market.
Do you think this
is a chance to make some big changes.
The markets would love this, but here's my skepticism. Do you think this is all going to happen in the next, 30, 40, 50 days? That's the part I don't think. Some's got to start first, and then we go second, then we go third.
I actually think if you take it one problem at a time, it is doable. I know this. Republicans don't believe it's responsible to drive off this fiscal cliff. We think the economy is far too weak. Turbulence matters at this point, and we really think the common ground, not higher taxes, higher revenue from growth.
Greg Meeks, yes, go ahead, please.
Let me just say, because, when we looked at the market today, primarily it was as a result of what we heard was happening in Europe and talking about instability in Germany's economy. But we only need to look at that lesson to know that imbalanced austerity doesn't work. Look at the UK, for example. They're currently in a double-dip recession after severe austerity. And Spain has a 25% unemployment, which will only increase as budget cuts kick in. And so I think the lesson is that we cannot accomplish deficit reductions and economic growth simply by cutting spending alone. Revenue generation is critical, and we have to make the appropriate investments in infrastructure and education to rebuild our country over the long term as necessary. And I think that we should be able to engage in a bipartisan conversation to figure out how we do both.
Greg Meeks, I just want to, before I lose both of you, look, what I hear you saying is you want to raise tax rates. You want to raise, I assume, the top tax rates. What I hear from Kevin Brady is something much different. Lower the rates and broaden the base. Now, already we've got a split here. First of all, Mr. Meeks, do I have your take right? Do you want to actually raise tax rates?
I want the top 2% to pay more, yes.
And Kevin Brady, what's your reaction to that? Because this has been the split that has divided us, for what, 15, 18 months.
Yeah, and and that difference is going to continue. We don't think raising taxes and actually harming the economy and paying for less than 10 days of spending per year is the right solution. But growth that creates more revenues. We know you can't pay our bills right now at 15% of GDP, but we think there's a smart way of a stronger economy that pays our bills at 18%, which actually gets us to where we want.
Do you think
taxes would not be raised on 98% of the Americans would not have their taxes raised?
Greg Meeks, do you have any sense of where President Obama is going to come down? There is a lot of conciliatory activity now. That's a good thing. Right after the election, it started last night. It continued today. Where's President Obama come down? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I think that we're going to come down close to where we were when we almost had a grand bargain during the summer. We had something close to $4 trillion. I think that the Speaker was close to agreement there, and at that time, his conference basically told him that they couldn't accept the deal. And I think that maybe this time with the new election, that we'll get closer to having that deal.
All right.
And I think that's what the Speaker was saying.
Larry,
Kevin.
Yeah, we saw that much differently than Greg does at the time. Truth is, we're at the table. We hope the President and the Senate will join us. We're willing to stay at the table to get this problem solved.
All right, great stuff. Thanks, House members Gregory Meeks and Kevin Brady. I'm very grateful.